Mr. Speaker.
James Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Green Party will also be supporting this bill to select committee, but as with the Labor Party, we've got a number of reservations, more about what the bill doesn't contain than what it does contain. The previous speaker, Mr. Bishop, referred to some of the things that the bill does do, in particular in relation to starting the moves towards tightening up around multinational tax avoidance. And of course, we know from the last 8 weeks or so that multinational tax avoidance is one of two very big public events in relation to the tax sphere. The other one, of course, is around foreign trusts. Mr. Speaker, this bill is the bill that would have addressed the laxity around New Zealand's foreign trust regulatory regime and our transparency regime had the government not 2 years ago killed off Inland Revenue's proposed review into how we regulate foreign trusts in New Zealand. So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about some of the context that has led up to this bill being introduced into the House and some of the things that we would like to see in the bill as a result of that timeline. So, Mr. Speaker, back in August the 15th, 2013, he's got his green book out. Inland Revenue warned the government about the high risks from New Zealand trusts. Mr. Speaker, I'm just going to quote here. They said in that report that our foreign trust rules were being perceived as a tax haven and were damaging to our international reputation. They said that foreign trusts were being used by people to avoid paying tax, not just in New Zealand, but in fact anywhere in the world. They said that New Zealand's current regulation was not good enough, and they made it clear, and our regulation made it difficult to enforce compliance with the rules. And Inland Revenue questioned the adequacy of our disclosure and record-keeping requirements and their ability to realistically reform the industry and to make it comply. So there were a number of concerns there. Now, December the 2nd, 2014 of that same year, Ken Whitney of the Antipodes Trust Group writes to Minister Macleay on behalf of the foreign trust industry concerned about the Inland Revenue's view of the industry. And that was Ken Whitney of the Antipodes Trust Group on December the 2nd, 2014. In that email, he claimed that he had spoken to the Prime Minister and that the Prime Minister had assured him that there were no plans to change the status quo, but that he should speak to then Minister of Revenue Todd Macleay. The very next day, the Minister, Mr. Macleay, expressed concern to Inland Revenue officials that their report might include removal of the foreign trust regime. And an official from Inland Revenue responded saying that, quote, they will bear in mind how we write the report. Bear this in mind when they write the report. Now then, on December the 12th of that same year, Inland Revenue produced another report on foreign trust rules. And they were sticking to their guns, Mr. Speaker. New Zealand's foreign trust rules... You're looking at me a bit funny, Mr. Speaker. Very good. Feel free to divide your attention, Mr. Speaker. New Zealand's foreign trust rules are damaging to New Zealand's international reputation. So they had a second report saying that in fact their recommendations for reform were even stronger than they had been in the previous August. Now, a few days after that, Todd Macleay met with representatives of the foreign trust industry, unaccompanied by Inland Revenue officials in Auckland at the offices of the Antipodes Trust Limited Company. So, Mr. Speaker, that group sought from the Minister, Minister Macleay, quote, a commitment from the government as soon as possible that it will not conduct a public review of foreign trust tax laws, but that it could keep on with its BEPS work, which has actually made it into this bill. So in other words, they specifically said, please don't proceed with the review of the foreign trust industry, but feel free to continue with your base erosion work, which is exactly what the government has done as a result of that meeting. So in this tax bill, they have included some measures around multinational tax avoidance and started to tighten up that regime and have not included anything around the foreign trust review that they were planning. That group said that their view is that, quote, it would severely damage the industry if that work was to proceed. Then on January the 22nd, 2015, there was another letter sent to the Minister proposing another meeting and expressing how pleased they were that the foreign trust industry was yet again meeting with the Minister, who then promptly met with Oliver Shaw, one of the other companies involved in this. Now, in May 2015, the Revenue Minister wrote to the foreign trust lobby group that he had been meeting and conversing with, reinforcing the earlier promise that the government did have no plans to review the foreign trust tax rules. And I just want to point out again that that is in stark contrast with both of those reports from Inland Revenue expressing real concern about foreign trust regulation and how actually it ought to be included in the review and thus make it into, or some of those reviews would have made it into the tax bill that we're debating tonight. So Mr Macleay concluded, quote, "I trust that this provides you and your industry with the certainty needed to continue to do business in New Zealand," end quote. Then, on May the 19th, 2015, the same Inland Revenue official informed her staff that there will be no review of foreign trust regulation in New Zealand. Now, the Panama Papers that Mr Robertson referred to have changed all of that, of course. So they have started to shine a light into a dark place.
Order. I am now going to interrupt the member after the member, I think, worked out that I've been thinking about it for some time. In a first reading, members can make passing reference. It's quite a broad debate, but members can make passing reference to what's not in the bill. I've let the member run for some time because members previously, including the member immediately before him, spent quite a lot of time on what wasn't in Mr Robertson's speech, rather than focusing on the bill. But I'm now going to ask the member to move from passing reference to the bill to only passing reference to what's not in the bill.
Certainly, Mr Speaker. Well, the conclusion of my passing reference to what is not in the bill is that we are 2 years behind on foreign trust law reform, and that ought to be in this bill. And in 2013, the Green Party introduced a piece of non-controversial legislation that would have imposed more rigorous registration and disclosure regime, and we are hoping that we will be able to introduce that into this bill, Mr Speaker, in later stages of the bill's passage through the House. Those measures would help to restore international confidence in New Zealand's international reputation as a well-regulated and transparent place to invest and trade. So, Mr Speaker, I will explain, given all of the absence of proper reform around foreign trusts, why we are supporting the bill through the House, certainly to its next stage, because it does go some way, as I said earlier, to closing down some of the look-through company abuses that have been occurring and some of the profit sharing from multinationals that has been recommended by Inland Revenue. It's compromised, of course, because the national government aren't prepared to go as far as Inland Revenue wanted, nor as fast, but it does move us in the right direction. The government has, of course, known about multinational tax avoidance for many years, but have been dragging their feet. So it is good to see in this bill some progress around that. Budgets in 2016 in the UK, Canada, the United States, Australia all saw new measures to introduce, to close some of the biggest loopholes in multinational tax avoidance around the world. But Budget 2016 in New Zealand saw no new measures at all to deal with that trend in New Zealand. And in fact, there is a wall of funding, cliff top, that we're about to go over in a year, unless the government addresses this in terms of Inland Revenue's ability to investigate and enforce. The Australian government expects nearly $4 billion Australian dollars in taxes from multinationals. We could be doing the same thing if this bill was tighter than it is, and we will be looking for ways to tighten it up even further. Mr Speaker, the bill is highly complex, and it will require thorough scrutiny by the Select Committee, but it is promoting some changes that we believe will have a positive impact on tax avoidance by multinational companies and tax abuse through companies as well. So it is a step in the right direction. It does not go as far or as wide as we would like to make a meaningful difference to the $1 billion or more of lost tax revenue through multinational tax avoidance in New Zealand, but it is a step in the right direction, and for those reasons the Green Party will be supporting this bill through the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Fletcher